This is Shadow Justice Minister Robert Gendrick, and he wants to know why young people are not paying for bus fare. He also wants to know why they're rebelling against their corrupt governments.
Now, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Gendrick, has been challenging London's fare dodgers. Let's have a look.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? Do you want to go back and pay like everybody else? Do you think it's all right not to pay? Why don't you go back and pay? You can say off as much as you want, but everyone else has to pay. You're carrying a knife, do you say? Nearly 1 in 25 people using London's public transport aren't paying for it. So there's 8 officers down there, but 1 minute away, that gate's wide open. It's also just annoying watching so many people break the law and get away with it. You're on camera, mate, you're bang to rights.
Just step to the side and...
All right, thanks very much, guys. It's the same with bike theft, phone theft, tool theft, shoplifting, drugs in town centres, weird Turkish barber shops. It's all chipping away at society. The state needs to reassert itself and go after lawbreakers.
Why don't you shape up and do what we want, and maybe then we'll actually behave as perfectly as you want us to. There's one thing between being nice to your neighbors, being socially accommodating to others, and there's another to just pay for everything while our government steals and lines its pockets and just invites more of its rich friends over to indenture us into paying them monthly rental payments, because that's what's happening in all of our urban centers. The rich just buy up the homes, they stick us in them to pay the rent, and then they're still profiting off of it. That's basically the universal cycle of why our housing market is absolutely so atrocious. So when I see videos like this from the Tories in Britain, I kind of have to laugh a little. Why am I laughing? Because there's some real issues that you need to solve, and you're busy giving people crap for not paying for bus fare. Are you serious? It's not like your systems work that well to begin with. They're full of bums and people with knives. And let's not forget that your subways should actually be acting as a shelter for people seeking to escape streets lined with Islamists who have knives and other nefarious individuals who have knives. Wouldn't it kind of make sense to just be a little easier on the people who are passively aggressively trying to tell you that things are not okay, that they're not going to be suckers and just pay for everything when you refuse to fix everything that you broke in their cities? Because I'm sure that's how they justify this to themselves.
Robert, what made you do it?
No, I was just fed up. I thought that fare dodging was out of control, whether it's down in London or across the country, and that no one was doing anything about it. And it was just one small example of a whole series of things that seem to be chipping away at society right now, whether it's graffiti, annoying people on the tube, playing loud music instead of wearing headphones, and more serious things as well, like shoplifting, mobile phone theft. It really feels like this stuff is getting worse, that the quality of life of everyone in the country is being diminished as a result, and the authorities have got to step up and do something about it, because normal hard-working people feel like fools that they're paying to go on the tube, and then they see somebody just flagrantly breaking the rules like this. And in London, Sadiq Khan, our do-nothing, useless mayor, needs to actually get into gear, stop talking about legalising cannabis, and get out on the streets tackling knife crime, shoplifting, fare dodging, all the things that are making quality of life so bad for Londoners right now.
I mean, this is a cultural decline, isn't it? I mean, even if TfL, the workers had more powers or there were more police in these stations, there clearly are people living with the attitude that I don't need to play by the rules. I mean, how do you enforce that? How do you change people's view of things?
So when this is the government representative basically saying, well, why aren't the police taking this more seriously? Why aren't they forcing people to pay for the bus fare or to act like more dignified citizens? You have to ask yourself, why do you keep bringing these crazy people into the country and you don't seem to have any problem with them? You seem to actually even encourage them. So why should we act like uptight, upright citizens when you're literally bringing in the riffraff, the worst of the worst of the world, and then you want us to behave perfectly? I think that's a big hypocrisy. I think it starts with our government, and then it can trickle down to us until our government starts actually doing the things that we ask it to, that we want it to, that it needs to do for the younger generations, instead of just catering to making the rich even richer than they already are. You're going to continue to get this. Our government has to get this through its head. It can't just keep doing what it's been doing and expect different results. That's not how reality works. So his diagnosis is completely wrong, and he's going to prove it by basically telling you that he doesn't want to take any ownership for where things are right now, and he doesn't want to accurately diagnose the problem. He doesn't want to say, hey, why are these kids doing this? Why are they dejected from society? Why don't they care? Why do they seem to have so much animosity towards older generations? Why are they rebelling so badly? Why do they refuse to see things from our moral perspectives? Well, maybe it's because we're not treating them very well or listening to any of their concerns, and we just keep doubling down and making the rich even richer.
Well, I think the authorities can and should do more. If you look at the Stratford station that I went to see on Saturday morning, there were 8 officers there. So it wasn't as if there was no one enforcing the rules. They were there, but they weren't doing anything about it. One was even watching as one of the gates was wide open as people were walking in and out, not tapping in or out. So law enforcement, whether it's the police or on public transport, needs to step up and actually do their jobs for once. But also, as you say, it's a broader societal problem than that. And I subscribe to the broken windows idea that if you allow small things to happen, more people will do them. It will get worse and worse. Some of those people will go on to do even more serious offences, and it eventually leads to a broader breakdown of trust, an explosion of crime, and it makes everyone's lives worse as a result. And you see that's happening in other cities and communities around the world, particularly in some big American cities. And you can also see in recent history when people have fought back against that. I mean, I think of when Rudy Giuliani was the can-do mayor of New York, and he really tackled issues like this and made everyone's lives better as a result. And that's what I want to emulate. So I'm taking up these causes like this, like tool theft, for example, like litter and fly tipping that I've done with GB News. And if we can get everyone in the country to step up and law enforcement to really take these small breaches of the law seriously, I think we can make everyone's lives better as a result.
What should we, just sort of ordinary people, do? Because the number of times I've been in a tube station in central London and seen someone, and I think one of the most irritating things to me is the way that they actually physically barge through the barriers. It's so brazen. It's actually relatively violent. It's quite intimidating. I've seen it before, and I've sort of tutted at people, like in a quite understated and far too English way.
You surprised me, Tom.
I've sort of stood there and I've sort of been thinking, well, what should I do? I mean, should I have run up to these people like you? Because in the video, at one point, one of them seems to imply that he's carrying a knife. I mean, this stuff is serious.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend other people to do that. I mean, do it if you want to. But obviously some of the people that I met were quite threatening. And so people need to look after themselves and take their own safety seriously. It's not for members of the public to be doing this. It's for those people who are paid to do this. And you can't have British Transport Police or TfL enforcement officers stood around doing absolutely nothing. On the video, there's even an example of an officer who's got his feet up on the counter, doom scrolling on Twitter, whilst people are walking in and out of the barrier without paying right next to the window where he's sat. That's completely wrong. You know, the public will be outraged at that. So it's for the people who are paid to do this job to step up and take action. Look, I'm a member of Parliament. It's my job to be out there raising these issues and shaming the authorities into action, but it's not for everybody else in society to be doing that.
So what you're saying is people should doom scroll on their phones less often and instead get out there and do things. That's an interesting allegory to take, perhaps not just in law and order, but in all walks of life.
Robert, may I ask you, were you expecting it to get such a response? I'm just looking on your Twitter account, and it's got 3.1 million views already, and I must say, does seem to be across the board support from what I can see. Anyway, I see you've already got a little message from TfL saying that fare evasion is unacceptable, and they have 500 uniformed officers, etc., deployed across the network. Were you expecting such a response?
No, I was absolutely blown away by the response. As you say, millions of people have been watching it and retweeting it. So it obviously must have tapped into something that people seeing this every day in their daily lives. And as I say, it's not just in London, it's all over the country. There was a YouGov poll that showed that 80% of people had seen others fare dodging. So this is happening the length and breadth of the UK. And it's not right. And it does make people feel silly that they are paying when they're going to work, going shopping, going to college, and they're seeing so many other people just breaching the rules. And so it's time to fight fight back, and hopefully this video can push the authorities to step up and do their jobs for once.
It does seem to be that TfL, Transport for London, have a policy that their own staff should not intervene when they see people fare dodging. They've said so much. I've seen people complain to them time and time again, and they've got this stock response that the employees of TfL are told not to intervene. Are you suggesting that the mayor, who I presume has powers in this area, I mean, he's responsible for TfL at the end of the day, should he call on TfL to change that non-intervention policy?
Well, I definitely want Sadiq Khan to step up and do something. I'm not holding my breath because that's not his style. But this is a major problem for London. It's even his own statistics suggest that 1 in 25 journeys aren't paid for. And this is costing TfL, i.e. everybody in their fares, 130 million quid a year. I suspect it's much worse than that, given the sheer outcry that we've seen today. Many, many people see this in their daily lives. So those figures are probably a massive understatement. Sadiq needs to have a plan. He needs to get out there and deal with this issue, not waste his time talking about left-wing causes like abolishing, legalizing cannabis like he was this week. Deal with shoplifting. Deal with knife crime on our streets. Deal with fare dodging. That is what Sadiq needs to be focused on.
We haven't got much longer. I just want to ask you.
Now, I'm actually quite torn here. I don't know whether to side with the government because technically what they're saying is right. We should be paying the fare as honest and decent citizens. But on the other side of the coin, I also see the perspective of those who want to say to themselves, you know what, my government is corrupt. My officials don't care about me. They're not doing anything to help me. They just want to hand money over to immigrants. Where was all this money for all the homeless people and all the people living on the streets before these immigrants showed up? Why wasn't that money available to them then? I don't think it's fair for a citizen to pay full fare when his government is not doing anything for him, when his government is trying to impose net zero and try to make life more difficult for the average poor person. I don't know how fair it is to tell them, hey, you need to pay full fare and sit next to this bum who smells like urine and probably has a knife on him, right? And then the other side of that too is it really fair to make people walk on the streets when you have a stabbing epidemic? Why is it only now that we see the government having all this money suddenly for people who aren't even citizens in our countries? Using that line of thinking, it's very easy to then tell myself, you know what, I'm going to take what I can get because my government isn't looking out for me anyways, and they're just handing free stuff to people who need it, honestly, as badly as I do. And I'm not getting as much as them. Why am I not getting as much when I'm an actual citizen to this country? So I can totally understand the logic these people apply when they tell themselves, you know what, I am justified in skipping this turnstile. I can just go through here because my government doesn't care about me. I can honestly see from these people's perspectives, and that's why it's hard for me to criticize them. I think our government needs to be doing a lot more to solve our problems. And I think it's a lot easier than our government wants to admit. It's beholden to markets that require it to keep housing prices high. Otherwise, all the boomers and people who vote for politicians will end up losing immense amounts of money on the homes they own. And then it's basically a collapse of a housing market, and all the people who have all the money end up losing it because a lot of it is tied up into real estate that they're in. Real estate has always been such a great asset to own historically. Therefore, most people have put their money into it, especially in the last 20 years, since markets have not recorrected since the subprime collapse. Ever since they reached those all-time lows, they've basically been going up steadily because the interest rate is also increasing, causing houses to be priced higher. Other factors exist too, such as your immigration rate, how much supply and demand there is, along with the region you're trying to purchase a home in. Obviously, urban centers are going to be in higher demand than somewhere in the middle of nowhere, which would be a feasible solution to the problem we have. We do have abundant parcels of land to build on. The key is just building a community out there. Put them near resource nodes and you can easily create thriving communities. Such a ridiculously difficult concept to come across if you're a corrupt government official who wants to pay construction companies immense amounts of money to build overpriced projects that are not on time, not on budget, and overpriced to begin with. So when you live inside of this ridiculous bubble and you actually know what is going on, it is very easy to understand why nobody really cares. That would be me flexing my chops as a former subprime broker. Yes, I know what I'm talking about some of the time. I actually know how the real estate market works and why our houses are so expensive. Anyways, I'll cut the video off here and bore you no further. If you want to help support the channel, please like and subscribe to the video, and you can help me produce more content like this.